insist you cease all further experiments.
This is it.
In our last 70s monster video, we dug up 10 of the most gloriously awful monster movies the 1970s ever produced, and you loved every single one of them. Well, good news! The 1970s had way more where that came from. 10 more monsters, and 10 more moments where you'll wonder how these films ever made it into theaters, and somehow found their way into our hearts forever. Godmonster of Indian Flats, 1973. What if the monster was a sheep?
Oh, you won't hurt me, will you?
Not a wolf, not a bear, not some ancient sea creature. A sheep, a big, mutant, 8-foot sheep embryo that grows in a glass incubation chamber in a laboratory and then escapes to terrorize a small Nevada mining town. Godmonster of Indian Flats was directed by Frederick Hobbs, who was not, it should be noted, primarily a filmmaker. He was a conceptual artist, and honestly, it shows, in the best possible way. The monster suit has visible seams running down the back. The creature wobbles when it walks, and in the film's most legendary scene, it chases a group of children through an open field, in broad daylight, at a pace that can only be described as enthusiastic shuffling. The kids are clearly not scared. One of them appears to be laughing. But here's the thing that makes Godmonster genuinely fascinating. Alongside the mutant sheep story, the film also includes a subplot about racism and small-town politics. At the same time as the sheep monster is terrorizing people, the film's villain is a racist mayor trying to frame a black businessman. In a monster movie about a sheep, the film barely got a theatrical release, but later home video rescues turned it into a cult legend. Nobody asked for this film. Nobody could have predicted it existed. And yet, here we are, 50 years later, still talking about the exploding phosphorus sheep, because of course it explodes at the end. ZaAt, 1971. Our next film answers a question that is somehow even more specific. What if a scientist turned himself into a walking catfish, and then just really wanted a girlfriend?
Oh, like the catfish? But it's beautiful.
ZaAt, also released as Blood Waters of Dr. Z and Attack of the Swamp Creatures, because distributors kept trying to make it sound better than it was, follows Dr. Leopold, a mad scientist who injects himself with a formula called ZaAt and transforms into a green rubber catfish humanoid. His plan is not world domination. His plan is to find a mate. He wants to turn a woman into a catfish creature so he won't be alone. It doesn't work, but he tries very hard. The monster suit is a green rubber nightmare with a leech-like mouth and the general silhouette of someone wearing a very ambitious Halloween costume. But the detail that nobody who has ever seen this film can forget, in one of the film's most infamous shots, you can clearly see the monster wearing white tennis shoes. Mystery Science Theater 3000 later featured ZaAt and introduced it to a whole new generation of bad movie lovers. And if you want the full experience, find the MST3K version. Watch Dr. Leopold walk through that swamp in his tennis shoes and enjoy. Grizzly, 1976. In 1975, Jaws changed cinema forever. In 1976, producer Harvey Flaxman had a thought. What if it was a bear?
Do you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the entire pitch. What if Jaws, but a bear? He went to investors with that concept literally 1 year after Jaws opened. He had financing within a week, $750,000, because America was ready for a bear. The bear's name was Teddy. He was an 11-foot Kodiak bear, the largest in U.S. captivity at the time, flown in from Washington State. And the crew's safety system, the thing standing between the cast and an 11-foot bear, was a green string on the ground meant to simulate an electric fence. A string. That was it. Critics called Grizzly Jaws with paws. They weren't wrong. There's a sheriff, a nature expert, a hunter. They copied the three-man team structure beat for beat. The bear attacks are shot from low angles just like the shark. There's even a version of the Indianapolis speech, except about bears. And here's the part that should embarrass every serious filmmaker who ever lived. Grizzly grossed $39 million. It became the #1 independent film of 1976. Blood Freak, 1972. Blood Freak is not just a bad monster movie. It's a bad monster movie that is also an anti-drug PSA, and a Christian morality film, and a Vietnam War commentary, all at the same time. A Vietnam veteran eats a drug-laced turkey at a Florida farm, mutates into a giant turkey-headed monster, and goes on a killing spree. The film then argues, directly to your face, that this is what happens when you do drugs. Co-director Brad F. Grinter appears on screen between scenes as a narrator. He sits in a chair. He reads from a script. He delivers anti-drug sermons directly to camera. And at one point, mid-monologue, he has a coughing fit and keeps going.
Any man who could refuse such temptation.
The turkey head itself is a papier-mâché mask that doesn't move. The actor can barely see through it and runs into things. The laboratory is someone's garage. The farm is someone's backyard. No film has ever tried to be this many things at once and succeeded at absolutely none of them. It is a perfect, beautiful disaster. And if you ever need to explain to someone what the 1970s were really like, show them Blood Freak. The Incredible Melting Man, 1977. Here is one of cinema's great accidental jokes. The Incredible Melting Man features special effects by a young artist named Rick Baker. Rick Baker would go on to win 7 Academy Awards for makeup and effects. His work in this film, the melting flesh, the deteriorating skin, is genuinely, disturbingly good. It looks real. It is the work of a master. It is also in a movie that is otherwise completely, magnificently incoherent. Astronaut Steve West survives a radiation blast near Saturn's rings, returns to Earth, and begins slowly melting. He escapes the hospital and goes on a killing spree, because apparently melting makes you hungry for human flesh. There's a sheriff who seems more annoyed than alarmed, and a subplot about a couple stealing lemons from a neighbor's tree that goes absolutely nowhere. Director William Sachs has said he intended it as a parody of 1950s sci-fi films. The studio wanted a straight horror film. Nobody told the cast. So you have a film where nobody agrees what tone they're making, and Rick Baker's extraordinary effects sitting in the middle of it like a Rembrandt painting hanging in a bus station. The movie ends with the melting man dissolving completely, and a janitor sweeps him up into a dustpan and throws him in the bin. Squirm, 1976. Some movies have big budgets. Some movies have big stars. Squirm had hundreds of thousands of worms. Real ones. A storm knocks down power lines in rural Georgia, electrifying the ground and turning earthworms carnivorous. They then attack the town. That's the movie. And to make it, the production used approximately 500,000 real earthworms, pumped through tubes into houses, diners, and directly onto actors' faces. Several cast members quit. The film's most infamous moment, a character's face being eaten by worms in close-up, was achieved by gluing worms directly to the actor's face. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars, but noted the worm sequences were, and I'm quoting, genuinely unpleasant. For a movie called Squirm, that is basically a 5-star review. What makes Squirm endure is that commitment. 500,000 real worms, glued to faces, pumped through tubes. This movie smelled bad to make. You can feel it through the screen, and there is something almost heroic about that. The Thing with Two Heads, 1972. Ray Milland won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1945 for The Lost Weekend, and was one of Hollywood's most respected leading men. Rosie Greer was a Pro Bowl NFL defensive tackle, 6'5", 285 pounds, one of the most physically imposing athletes of his generation. In 1972, they shared one body, and they hated each other.
Take it easy, lady. I'm not gonna hurt you. Run, you idiot! Get help! 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 Shut up.
The Thing with Two Heads follows racist surgeon Dr. Maxwell Kirshner, played by Milland, who is dying and needs a new body. His head gets transplanted onto death row inmate Jack Moss, played by Greer, a black man he would never have spoken to in real life. They now share one body, one set of arms, and an absolute mutual contempt. The film's tagline, written by AIP's marketing department, who clearly understood exactly what they had, was, "They transplanted a white bigot's head onto a soul brother's body." Before the human transplant, the surgeon practices on a gorilla. The two-headed gorilla suit is one of the greatest practical effects failures in cinema history. It looks like two people wearing one very confused costume, because that's exactly what it is. And then there's the car chase, a 10-minute motorcycle and car chase that has nothing to do with the monster premise. It exists because they had access to vehicles and a road. It goes on forever. Over the years, people have looked back at The Thing with Two Heads as one of those strange exploitation films that accidentally raises bigger questions about race and identity than anyone probably intended. Nobody intended this, it just happened. That's the magic of the 1970s. Blackenstein, 1973. 1973 gave us Blackula, which was actually a genuinely good horror film with real atmosphere and a compelling lead performance. And then, in the same year, someone said, "We should do Frankenstein." Blackenstein follows a black Vietnam veteran who loses his limbs in combat. His fiancée takes him to a scientist named Dr. Stein who uses DNA injections to regrow his limbs. A jealous lab assistant tampers with the formula, and the veteran becomes a monster. The Blackenstein creature wears a flat-top afro, a square-shouldered suit, and platform shoes. He is committed to his look, but the detail that has made this film legendary in bad movie circles, the thing that audiences have been analyzing for years, is that he seems physically incapable of turning corners. He walks in a completely straight line, at all times. If a victim is not directly in front of him, he cannot reach them. Victims essentially have to stand still and wait to be caught. The monster doesn't appear until approximately minute 60 of an 87-minute film. The first hour is mostly people talking in a laboratory that is visibly someone's house in Los Angeles. Blackenstein is what happens when you greenlight a concept without a script. And yet, it found an audience. Because the 1970s audience was loyal. They showed up. They watched the whole thing. And they never forgot the man who could not turn corners. Monstroid, 1980. Most movies take a few months to make. Some ambitious ones take a year or two. Monstroid took 8 years.
This is it.
Production began in 1971. The film was announced completed in 1975. Announced again in 1977. Finally released in 1980. The film opens with a title card claiming it's based on a true story from Chimayo, Colombia in 1971. There is no such story. The town of Chimayo is in New Mexico. Colombia is a different country. The filmmakers appeared genuinely unaware of this. It stars John Carradine as a priest, whose presence in a bad monster movie had become so reliable by the late 70s that it was essentially a genre requirement. It also stars James Mitchum, son of Robert Mitchum, continuing a proud tradition of famous people's children making films their parents would have questions about. The monster itself, a lake serpent, appears briefly, in darkness, at odd angles. The production clearly had very limited time with the creature prop and worked around it creatively, meaning you barely see it in a monster movie after 8 years. Tintorera, 1977. We close our list with a film that asked a bold question about the Jaws formula. What if there was less shark and more romance? Tintorera is Mexico's answer to Jaws. It features a tiger shark, a beautiful coastline, and approximately 40% of its runtime dedicated to a romantic love triangle between two men and a woman on a yacht. The shark shows up occasionally to remind you this is technically a monster movie. Imagine someone watched Jaws and thought, needs more feelings, less fish. That person made Tintorera. Unlike Jaws, which used a mechanical shark, Tintorera used real shark footage in ways that feel unsettling and controversial today. This caused significant controversy and would be impossible to film today. So the film has this strange quality where the human drama is fake and the animal danger is real, which is exactly backwards from how movies are supposed to work. Director Rene Cardona Jr. also made Survive, the film about the Andes plane crash survivors who resorted to cannibalism. So he clearly had a type when it came to people being eaten. Tintorera is the only shark movie where you find yourself genuinely invested in the love triangle and mildly annoyed when the shark interrupts. That is an extraordinary achievement. Accidental, but extraordinary. These weren't polished, they weren't perfect, but they were ours. We watched them on Saturday afternoons when the good cartoons were over. We stayed up past bedtime to catch them on Channel 48. We sat in the back of station wagons at drive-ins and raised our eyebrows at rubber suits and loved every second of it. Which one of these is your favorite? Drop it in the comments now. And if you think we missed one, because trust me, the 70s had way more. Because if you want a part 3, we've got the list ready.